You can't make people respect you with words. Respect is not something you ask for. It's not a performance. It's not about being louder or more persuasive. Respect is something people feel from you, without you saying a single thing. And as Carl Jung said, people don't see you as you are. They see you through the lens of their own projections, and through what you unconsciously project into the world. That's why so many people spend their entire lives trying to earn respect, only to remain invisible. Because it's not about what you say, it's about who you become in the eyes of others. And that image is always a reflection of how you perceive yourself. Jung wrote that we project onto others the things we refuse to see in ourselves. But it works both ways. People instinctively sense if you're afraid, if you're ashamed, if you're chasing approval, and they respond accordingly. The first psychological truth that can change your reality is this: people respect those who don't seek validation. The more you need it, the less you'll receive. Because your need is perceived as weakness. And weakness doesn't inspire respect. It triggers avoidance, even pity. Confidence isn't what you display. It's what you no longer have to hide. It's the absence of conflict between who you are and who you're trying to be. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." The people who radiate true strength aren't loud. They aren't dominant. They don't try to control. They've simply made peace with their shadow. That's where real power comes from. Not from pretending to be perfect, but from no longer being ashamed of what's real. And that's the essence of the first principle. You gain respect not by performing a persona, but by integrating who you are. When you accept your strength and your vulnerability, your anger and your peace, you don't need to prove anything. You become still, whole. And wholeness is something people feel, instantly. Respect shows up when you stop lying to yourself, when you stop trying to be palatable, when you stop smiling through anger, when you stop saying yes while betraying yourself. Because it's this inner war, this split, that distorts your signal to the world. When you are internally unified, you are consistent. You're rooted. You're not afraid to be seen as too much, too direct, too different. You simply are. And that's threatening to people who wear masks, because they can't control you. They can't guilt you. They can't mold you into something useful. And so, they respect you, sometimes silently, sometimes from a distance, but deeply. This is how unconscious communication works. People don't respond to your words. They respond to your energy, to your coherence. And if you still think you'll earn respect by being nice, by pleasing, by adapting, you won't. Because what you're seeking isn't respect. It's approval. And that's a different language altogether. People aren't reacting to you. They're reacting to what your presence awakens in them. If you carry guilt, fear, insecurity, they sense it. Not logically, not consciously, but energetically. And they treat you accordingly. But if you're at peace with yourself, you become a mirror. And mirrors aren't debated with. They're either respected or avoided, but never ignored. That's what true presence is. It doesn't ask. It doesn't chase. It just is. The second psychological principle is simple, but often misunderstood. People respect your boundaries, not your compliance. We live in a world where being nice is confused with being passive, where saying yes is expected, even when you mean no, where people are taught to prioritize peace, even if it costs their dignity. But Carl Jung warned us, what you repress will rule you from the shadows. And when you repress your no long enough, you become resentful, drained, and invisible. The truth is, people don't respect those who constantly adjust, bend, or explain. They respect those who draw clear lines and don't apologize for them. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about defining where you begin. Without them, you're not a person. You're a projection screen for others. Jung's idea of the persona is crucial here. The persona is the mask we wear to function in society, the socially acceptable version of ourselves. But if you live only as your persona, people sense it. You become agreeable, polished, even likable, but not respected. Why? Because deep respect is not earned through politeness. It's earned through truth. And truth has edges. It doesn't always accommodate. It doesn't always smile. When you say no without guilt, when you hold your position without explaining it 10 times, when you walk away from people who don't value your energy, you're teaching others how to treat you. Not through pressure, but through presence. People may not like your boundaries, but they will remember them. And that memory creates space for respect to grow. Because boundaries create contrast, and contrast is clarity. You become someone with a shape, a center, a backbone, someone who doesn't disappear just to be accepted. That leads us to the third principle. The less you need people to validate you, the more power you carry. You've felt this before, in someone who enters a room quietly but owns it completely. Not because they dominate, but because they're free. They don't need your attention. And that freedom is magnetic. Jung often spoke about individuation, the process of becoming whole, of separating from collective expectations. The individuated person doesn't seek approval because they've already made peace with who they are. And that peace radiates. Neediness repels. Self-sufficiency attracts. Not the fake kind that says, "I don't need anyone," while dying for validation inside. But the kind that arises from deep internal work, from facing your shadow, from sitting in loneliness and not letting it define you, from becoming enough, not because someone else said so, but because you finally believe it. When you don't need people to like you, you become dangerous in the best way. You're not easy to manipulate. You're not easy to impress. And most importantly, you're not trying to convince anyone to stay. This changes everything, because people respect what they cannot easily sway. If they sense you will adjust yourself just to keep them, the power is gone. But if they sense that you're whole with or without them, they pay attention, sometimes with awe, sometimes with fear, but always with respect. True self-worth is quiet. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. And it certainly doesn't need to explain itself. The moment you stop trying to be impressive and start being honest, something shifts. You stop chasing significance, and suddenly you become significant. The fourth principle may seem counterintuitive, but it's deeply rooted in Jungian psychology. People don't respect just your goodness. They respect the danger you've made peace with. We're taught to be nice, to be harmless, to avoid confrontation. But Jung warned, a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has it under voluntary control. That's the shadow, the parts of ourselves we're afraid of, our rage, our darkness, our power. We repress them to appear likable, but in doing so, we become invisible. Because people sense when you've amputated parts of yourself to fit in. Respect doesn't come from being safe. It comes from being whole, from knowing what you're capable of, and choosing restraint. A person who has never looked into their anger, who pretends they have no darkness, cannot truly be trusted. Why? Because they're split. They're hiding from themselves, and that makes them unpredictable. Jung's shadow isn't evil. It's unlived potential. It's the fire you never learned to hold. And when someone walks into a room with that fire under control, people feel it. They don't always know why, but they pay attention. Because power that isn't flaunted is the most potent of all. When you've met your own shadow, when you've stopped being afraid of your own voice, your own anger, your own capacity, you no longer need to prove anything. You don't become aggressive. You become grounded, still, present. And that presence carries weight. You don't have to dominate a room. You just have to be fully there, unapologetically whole. That's when people feel both curiosity and caution around you. And from that combination, respect is born. And now, the fifth principle, maybe the most underestimated of all. Calmness is power. In a world addicted to noise, silence stands out. When everyone is reactive, the one who remains composed becomes the center of gravity. People respect calm not because it's passive, but because it's rare. True calm isn't numbness. It's not detachment. It's regulated intensity. It's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't flinch when tested. Someone who listens more than they speak. Someone who doesn't need to convince you, because they already believe themselves. This calm comes from integration, from work, from choosing self-control over impulse, awareness over reaction. Jung believed that emotional maturity comes from the union of opposites, not choosing one side over the other, but learning to hold both. Calmness is the fruit of that union. It's the sign that you've been through storms, and you no longer fear them. And when people feel that in you, they don't question your strength. They respect it. So let's bring it together. Respect doesn't come from asking. It doesn't come from force. It doesn't come from performance. It comes from who you've become when no one's watching. From the parts of yourself you've integrated. From the battles you've stopped outsourcing to others and started fighting internally. Respect is a mirror. People give it when they sense that you don't need it. When you've chosen yourself, not to impress them, but to stop betraying yourself. Carl Jung didn't teach us how to be likable. He taught us how to be whole. And in a fragmented world, wholeness is power. People don't respect perfection. They respect presence. They respect congruence. They respect those who know their edge and choose peace over performance. So if you want respect, don't chase it. Integrate, become, and let the rest happen by itself.